High-end real estate sales are down in Calgary so far this year. With more on whether that's happening across the real estate market, RE/MAX's Sam Correa is here. Nice to see you this morning.
Thank you.
And you've been crunching some numbers this week. Pretty interesting, actually, story going on right now. And actually, those high-end sales aren't necessarily indicative of what else is going on. Let's have a look at and just see how sales are going across the city so far. We've got sort of a heat map, I think you call it. So this is what we're looking at here. Just tell us exactly what we're looking at.
Well, I think there's a lot of talk of what's happening in the inner city. And I spent the week, interviewing my colleagues who do a lot of work in the suburbs. And so I thought it would be useful to bring this heat map provided by the Calgary Real Estate Board. And basically what we're looking at there is the sales to listing price in every area.
So the red is they've either sold, they're very close to list price, in some cases above list price. And when we see some yellow and some green, that means that those areas are a bit softer. The market is softening in there.
Well, yeah, what we're looking at is anything in red, and there's a couple of districts that have had an average price last month at or above the list price. Yep. And so what you see there is a few different areas. I think Sunelta had 3 sales there that were competing prices or higher. Right. And then there's a lot of pink going on there, which is basically within 98% of the list price to sell price.
So very close. Now, what would this map have looked like last year?
Last year in February, we of course had 20% less homes on the market at that time. And although we can't have the ability to pull it today, the entire map would be completely red or pink.
So we're definitely seeing a hit happen and hits happen in the real estate market. Let's talk about this unusual trend that you were pointing out to me earlier in the week when we were talking. Normally, when we start to see the real estate market trend or soften, you were telling me that it happens on the outskirts and the core remains strong. Correct. It's reversed this year.
Yes, well, I've been an agent for 20 years, and I've certainly seen some highs and lows and lived through a lot of different markets. And historically, when the market does a bit of an adjustment, it does start at the suburbs and kind of work its way in. And so it's the first time that I've seen, actually, it's been a bit of a reverse effect. And a lot of that has to do with just in the inner city, there was a little bit more new development, a little bit higher inventory, and so we've seen a complete reverse effect.
You've got some interesting, your own properties we can use as examples, some specific examples. Let's start with Elbow Park. That is one of the areas that, if you compare to 2012, we're seeing prices soften a bit.
Exactly. I brought 3 homes today that I currently have listed, and starting off with Elbow Park. And I thought what was interesting on all these properties is they were originally sold in and around 2012. This property here, it was actually late 2011, sold for 1.9 million plus improvements. Roughly, it's about 2.1 as far as current improvements and what the homeowner's basically purchase price is. And today it's being offered for sale at 1.79 million.
So we're seeing that market soften, as you mentioned, in the inner city. When we go to the slopes, for instance, which gets us a little closer to the perimeter of the city, this is a bit of a wash if you've owned this property.
Yes, well, this is a good example as well. This is a home I've just recently listed. We'll be featuring next week on Friday. As you can see, it's a very contemporary home. In 2012, it had sold for 1.55 million, and about 3 days ago, it was listed at 1.65.
So very close. And then you mentioned we're actually still seeing some competing offers. This property in Valley Ridge is a great example of that.
Yeah, this is a home that was sold, was listed last Friday, and actually within, I think, 48 hours, we had some competing offers. And matter of fact, I have a backup offer on that property if the first offer should not come together by Wednesday.
Wow.
So, when you talk about our city and what's happening with the activity, I thought that'd be a good example.
Certainly not the doom and gloom we're hearing from some sectors. We are, as you mentioned, seeing still some of that red and some competing offers happen. We don't have a ton of time left, Sam, but I want to get to advice for folks who are watching this at home and maybe looking at taking some action in the real estate. Let's start with the first-time home buyer. It is staying strong in the perimeter, and you mentioned some of those starter homes' value is staying high. Should they wait if they're renting right now?
Well, I've spent the week to interview some of my colleagues who do a lot of work in our furthest communities, and I've got the same message from a lot of different agents, and it's quite interesting. Definitely that price point from $450,000 to $650,000. There's not enough inventory, and a lot of their transactions that they've had to deal with in the last 30, 45 days, they've had to actually had some competing offers.
And so for the first-time home buyer, should they stay out of that market?
Well, here's the beauty of what we're dealing with today. Also looking at the interest rates at 2.79, we've only seen that twice in 9 years. Right. And if that same interest rate was to jump to 3.79, which is still a fantastic interest rate, that same property to finance just over the next 60 months would be anywhere of $40,000 to $50,000 extra just in interest.
So interest rate's good. Maybe that first-time home buyer, this is still a good time to get in, even if those prices are strong.
Absolutely, it's less than rent, and you should be jumping in the market.
Yeah, and you were also mentioning to me this is a great time for people who are thinking about getting into the inner city. Maybe they're in the suburbs now. This is probably a good time to get into the inner city because, as you mentioned, the price is taking a bit of a haircut right now.
Well, as you can see from the heat map, some of the areas in the inner city have no data. Right. And so as a result, a lot of people that were possibly always had their dream to live in their core, but because of the price point was maybe 10% out of where their affordability was, as they living in the outskirts of our city, some of the suburbs, this is a great opportunity to get inner city.
Okay, great stuff as always. RE/MAX's Sam Correa, and if you want more information, you can head to samcorrea.ca.
The Market, sponsored by Sam Correa Real Estate, marketing your home for all it's worth.